50 years ago this weekend is the anniversary of the Monterey Pop Festival. This event included the likes of Otis Redding and his major breakthrough, and Janis Joplin and Big Brother and the Holding Company and their big breakthrough. And it's been seen as one of the events that sparked off the Summer of Love. And I was actually inspired to do this by a post I saw on Facebook by my friend Doug, known over on YouTube as Fat Vinyl City. Shout out to you, Doug. And I wanted to present to you a series of 14 albums here that were released between 1966 and 1969. And that would be from just before the Summer of Love really kicked off and during the time of Monterey, all the way up through Woodstock. Now, you're not going to find classics like the first Santana album or Sgt. Pepper, which I've already covered in this set, or a lot of others, but these are what I have from that era that I could dig out. So I wanted to portray to you the musical diversity that was the 1960s. All over the world, British invasion and here. And we're going to start out with the Young Rascals, including Good Lovin', one of the great rock and soul songs of all time. Felix Cavaliere is in this group. This is an amazing album, especially if you love up-tempo 60s soul with a lot of organ and a lot of passion. Great album. Great single. Petula Clark, Pet Clark, These Are My Songs. That album you just saw by the Young Rascals was from 1966. The only one I have from that year. This one is from the year of the Summer of Love. The big hit off this was Don't Sleep in the Subway. She was in her 30s during the 60s. But, her pop tunes were still kind of part of that era. She was part of the mod scene. I always liked her. Donovan has been one of my favorite 60s artists for years. And one of my favorite songs from him is on this album, and it's called Wear Your Love Like Heaven. This album is actually a double album in a big box here, and it was released later as 2 parts. One part was a record that was actually called Wear Your Love Like Heaven, which was an album that was a psychedelic pop record, and the other record released later was called For Little Ones, and it was basically a set of folky kids songs, but everything on those albums are here. Just Donovan being amazing. I'm going to open up this box because there's a lot to see here. Over here you've got some lyrics on a big green sheet. If you can see it on the top, this album belonged to somebody named Mag, signed February 8th, 1968. And inside this album, you get a folder filled with sheets containing poems by Donovan, like The Enchanted Gypsy, Song of the Naturalist's Wife, The Tinker and the Crab, Widow with Shawl, The Lullaby of Spring. I'm sorry, one of them fell out here. This album was preserved magnificently. Very seldom do you find records from the late 60s with everything intact like this, all the internal goodies so beautifully. This is the old Epic label, yellow Epic label. I'm not going to show you that. I just wanted to show you the goodies and the lyric sheet on that album. Wonderful album by Donovan. There's Donovan with the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. There's a really interesting story behind this 1967 Motown album by Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. If you look at the song titles on here, on this album, you will see that one of the songs here is called The Tears of a Clown, which was a really big hit for the band around 1970. But this is a 1967 album that was originally titled Make It Happen. The album didn't do terribly good at first, but when Tears of a Clown was released again as a single and became huge in 1970, they reissued the same album, same content and same cover, except they took that little part out in the middle and with the same font wrote in the tears of a clown. Amazing, isn't it? But this is the original pressing of it, with the original name. And see, it has all the old Miracle albums on the back. I don't know if the retitled album actually had that sound, and you all know what the old Motown label looks like. I got this just for the novelty of it. Also from 1967, Silver Throat, Bill Cosby Sings. Nothing personal out there. I know that the Bill Cosby trial is ongoing, but, you know, let's face it, the man is virtually blind now, so, you know, give a brother a break, okay? Please refrain from any potentially tasteless jokes you have about Bill Cosby's current state. But this album, you know, for a guy who clearly, you know, is comedy-based, his singing on this album isn't half bad. There's some great soul stuff on this album. It's kind of talk singing, but, you know, he's trying to make a go of real singing. He's not just goofing around like he is on Hickey Burr. And, you know, it's some great kind of soul jazz stuff. He even does Ray Charles' I Got a Woman on here, and Stevie Wonder's A Place in the Sun. You know, sometimes he's a little bit affected, you know, comedically, but it's not actually a bad album at all. I have no problem with it. Dusty Springfield. Honestly, you know, I know Dusty was a perfectionist, but every time I hear an album of hers, honestly, it's so consistent. And this is another one. I can't... The Look of Love, of course, is a great Burt Bacharach and Hal David song from the James Bond film Casino Royale. But there is nothing bad on this album. Dusty was just on a roll in 1967. These are the albums she had before that. Even as late in the game as the 80s, from what I can hear, she still respected quality. I love this album. One of my favorites from 1967. Now we're up to 68. My father told me a lot about this particular album. Wheels of Fire by Cream. You know, I don't know if you can see it, but this album has kind of an iridescent cover. It has a plastic sheet, but it does have an iridescent cover. The only song I knew from this was the opening song, White Room. You know, it's a great, great psychedelic pop album on the first side. But on the second side, there is a couple of long live sessions, including an instrumental version of Spoonful and a song called Toll, where Ginger Baker takes a long drum solo at the end. It's not to everybody's cup of tea, but I really love it. The inside, ooh, sorry about that, is a giant Peter Max-like psychedelic design. It's another great album from the late 60s, very defining of the psychedelic blues rock sound. The Bee Gees, Horizontal. This isn't actually, if I understand it, their fourth album and their second major one. As you can see, the Bee Gees were actually, you know, three brothers at the time, and, you know, a rather, I would say, two other members. You know, it was a larger band at that point, actually accompanying them. This, of course, had their big hit, Massachusetts. Very good, you know, late 60s Baroque psychedelic pop Bee Gees. They are the Bee Gees as they appeared in those days. Larry Coryell. He just passed away recently, R.I.P. Larry. He made some great early psychedelic rock and jazz fusion records around the same time Miles Davis did. Maybe even a little before, and sang on them too, and this is one of them, just called Coryell. Now we're up to 1969. Another Smokey Robinson and the Miracles albums, Four in Blue, and they are not kidding, they are all wearing blue. I don't know if this album was one of their albums that did necessarily all that great, but it has a version of a song called California Soul, which I've only ever heard before on a compilation of singles that were given away with buying Slurpees at 7-Eleven, and I love that song. This is a great album. A lot of covers, but great Motown album from the late 60s. The Bee Gees, Odessa. This is a double album. It's been released in many configurations. A single album that was whittled down and different things. And the great part about this, it's a first pressing because I don't know if you can see it, but the cover is actually a felt material. And that's the way it was originally released. Later, even double prints of this were not. You all know the Atco label, but I'll open it up and just show you the picture inside. Kind of a Baroque concept album, but I could have found this on CD or just even the double vinyl with the conventional cover, but just finding it this way with the felt is just amazing. Kind of a grail for me. Linda Ronstadt's debut album from 1969 after a time with the Stone Ponies. Hand-sewn, homegrown. I love Linda Ronstadt during this period, personally. Procol Harum, A Salty Dog from 1969. Classic album. And yes, we end on The Monkees, Instant Replay from 1969. The Bee Gees have been called everything from the first manufactured boy band to a bit of a joke. But, you know, by this point, the Bee Gees, I had a lot of Bee Gees records in here. The Monkees were talking about, you know, creative control, and they were actually getting it, you know. There was a lot more songwriting from the Monkees on this album. It was, you know, just before the show went off the air in the late 60s, early 70s. I don't know exactly when, but there they are at that time. This is after their movie Head. So, you know, that's that. So, this is what I have for vinyl that came out during the late 1960s, mid to late 1960s. So, anybody who loves the music of that time or grew up in that time, peace and love to all of you. We can sure use some now, the way things are going. And, you know, just keep remembering the time when musical diversity was considered a good thing and a positive thing, and people were just doing it. Just grooving to the music. Enjoy. See you next time. Peace.